In the center of town. We all travel to the crime scene in the center of town separately. Whatever government vehicle Unit Bravo uses must have sped through the streets, because they arrived well before me and I didn't exactly drive slow. I parked my car near the police barrier. There are thankfully no crowds this time, and moved down the alley to join the others, who are already looking over the victim. The street is so narrow, the walls looming so high, that even the remnants of morning sun can't pierce through the deep shadows. Poor kid, Farah says, shaking her head. I shove my hands into my coat pockets, my throat constricting slightly at the sight. It's a male teenager crumpled in a heap at the edge of the dank alleyway, his face hidden. Tina, having left before us to secure the scene, approaches. She takes a shaky breath. It's Garrett Hayes. I move forwards, frowning in sympathy as she grips her notepad tightly. I'm so sorry, Tina. Just find out who did this, okay? She asks, glancing up to stare at me. Her eyes shine with unshed tears. I give a nod, trying to smile through my uncertainty. What details do we have? She glances at her notepad. Nothing much. A road cleaner spotted him early this morning. She takes a shuddering breath. The forensic team won't be here for a while, since they have to travel back from the city. And with one last look at Garrett, she turns slowly and slouches away. Farah follows Tina's retreat with a cocked eyebrow. Quite the woman, that one. Nate swipes her round the back of the head. You're standing at a murder scene. Show some respect. We haven't had a murder in Wayhaven for decades, and now we have two? I ask the question more to myself than the others. How am I supposed to protect this town when I have no clue what's going on? I groan loudly, twisting around and throwing my hands up. Nate steps up beside me. That's an admirable statement, one I wish we could offer more help with. His gaze passes to Adam, who shifts away from the sudden attention. Are we sure it's the same killer? Adam asks. Yeah, it's definitely him, Morgan says. I twist around to look at her. What? How can you know that? Her lips sharpen into a long smirk, reminding me too much of a wolf to be comfortable. I shift on the spot to avoid taking an instinctive step back. A hunch? She offers. I ignore the statement, all of us once again returning our attention to the boy folded into one corner. His black coat is bunched up around his neck. The killer must have used the collar of his coat to drag him down here, I suggest. The fabric is pulled out of shape. I crouch down to study it closer, my nose wrinkling at the putrid smell of trash from the overflowing bins only a few feet away. Using a pen, I lean forwards to push the collar out of the way a little, the material stiff against my attempts. Wait, detective, don't... But Nate's warning comes too late. The coat shifts position. The boy's head suddenly lolls to one side, his neck exposed. The skin is completely shredded, any of it remaining stained dark with blood. Muscles and tissue have been ripped away from bone, protruding from the jagged gash in a sickening display. The mangled sight of it takes a moment to process before I can react. The scene and its violence force a shocked gasp from me, one I only just managed to bite down. Rolling my shoulders to stem the feeling, I frown and try not to let my initial reaction show. I glance over at the rest of the group, none of them seeming as surprised at this discovery as I am. Have you seen this before? I ask. Not exactly, but... Nate begins, to which Adam throws him a sharp stare. Nate thins his lips for a moment. No. I glance back at the victim, paying closer attention to the wound. I don't know of any weapon that could have done that. Whoever killed him hadn't just slit the boy's throat, they'd torn it open. Things like this just don't happen in Wayhaven. I ball my fists in my pockets, stepping away from the body and giving a defeated sigh. Celeste, Tina calls, all of us spinning around to face her. The forensics team is here, and... She trails off. His mother still needs to be notified. My stomach sinks at the realization. Right. Tina heads to where a couple of pristinely clean silver vans have drawn up. Several technicians in white suits step out. The bustle of activity from the text shatters the somber silence that had fallen over the scene. Well, I purse my lips. I suppose I better go deliver the news. I'll meet you guys back at the station. I turn to head away, my steps heavy, resisting the idea of what I have to do next. You're not going alone, Adam calls, making me pause mid-step. I round on him, my teeth gritted. Excuse me? One of us is going with you, he says, his stern voice only making my annoyance grow. The rest of us have to check in with Agent DeWolfe. 'Cause that tone's really going to make her open to suggestions, Farrah says. She slaps Adam on the back, who throws her a stern glare. Nice going. Letting out a breath, I step back towards the group. I suppose we are meant to be working together. Having backup will be useful, as I don't know what I'll find at Kate's house. Good call, Detective, Adam replies. Amazingly, there is no gloating in his tone, just sincerity. It helps to try and remember this is about finding a murderer, not personal feelings, but that's a hard task in this moment. Would you mind coming along, Nate? I ask. I think it's going to be a pretty delicate situation. And you seem the best at those from what I've seen. I keep that thought to myself. Nate gives an understanding smile. Of course. By the time we're done, Verda will probably have some results for us, so we can meet back at the station, I say. Adam gives a stiff nod. We'll report back to Agent DeWolfe in the meantime. With that decided, the group splits in separate directions, Nate and I going one way, and the others heading further down the alley. At the edge of town. The victim's mother, Kate Hayes, lives in one of the small groups of houses at the edge of town. Ringed by a barrier of forest in one direction and a manicured community green on the other, it's rather idyllic. Yet the normally bright white houses appear gray in the shadow of the day, heavy clouds obscuring whatever sun there might be. The trees, usually plump with lush green foliage, are bare and stark, clawing at the houses as they shiver in the chill breeze. Even the usual cheerful birdsong has gone silent. Pulling up outside of Kate's house, I stare at the blue-painted door for a moment. Is this your first time delivering this kind of news? Nate asks softly from the passenger seat, making me flinch out of my thoughts. Yeah, I say through a heavy breath, and I'm not exactly looking forward to it. I mean, how am I supposed to tell her that her son is dead? I grip the steering wheel tighter. It'll be painful for her, no doubt about that, he replies, but it's better than not knowing. I guess you're right. I rub a hand over my face. We better get on with it. Nate looks relieved as we move to get out. I didn't realize just how small my car was until he'd just barely managed to cram all 6'4" of himself into it, his knees nearly butting up against his chin. He shoves open the door, pouring himself out and stretching as soon as his feet hit the pavement, like a cat unfurling from a long nap. I begin walking up the front path, only to pause when Nate calls to me, his hand coming to rest gently on my shoulder. An instant warmth rushes over me at the touch, a tingling passing over my skin. It's unexpected, but far from unpleasant. I turn to face Nate, noticing him staring at his hand still on my shoulder. He withdraws it quickly and shoves it into his jean pocket. Had he felt it too? I blink the thought away. I'll be right here if you need me, he says after a quiet moment, a smile lighting his face. I smile in return. Thanks. We turn back to face the door, the sky blue paint not as inviting in that moment as it should be. It swings open before I even have a chance to knock. Kate stands in the doorway, her porcelain skin dulled and dark circles shadowing beneath her eyes. She's normally petite, but today she looks minuscule, her body sagging and her long, red hair dripping over her drooped shoulders. Detective DeWolfe, she croaks. Hello, Kate, I reply, keeping my voice steady. What are you doing here? Her voice trails off, her eyes widening in horrified realization. That murder this morning. No. She shakes her head, the simple word hanging heavy in the air. No, I don't believe it, no! She cries out, wailing, sinking to the floor and screaming out her sudden grief. The hollow sound of it is enough to wrench against even the coldest heart. I fall to my knees beside the hunched woman, wrapping my arms around her in an attempt to offer even the slightest bit of comfort. "Oh, Kate, I'm so sorry." She doesn't reply, instead clinging to me and sobbing into my shoulder. It takes all my remaining energy just to continue to listen to her heart shattering without breaking down into sobs myself. We manage to help Kate into the living room. She slumps onto the sofa, staring blankly at the coffee table. The cream walls feel constricting. The happy smiles of Garrett in the photos dotted about the room seem to stare at me in accusation. I fidget on the plush sofa, trying to breathe in shallow breaths to avoid the disinfectant smell emanating from her home dental practice on the floor above. "Here you are," Nate says softly, placing a steaming cup of tea in front of Kate. She flicks her wide-eyed gaze to him, attempting a thank you through her hoarse throat. Nate moves to take the seat on the sofa beside me, a hushed quiet falling over all of us. "I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you some questions," I say, pulling my notepad from my belt. Kate nods, wrapping her shaking fingers around the mug, but not taking a sip. "I understand." I shift forward a little. "Where was Garrett supposed to be last night?" "I think..." She frowns deeply, taking a ragged breath. "He was supposed to be staying with a friend. Studying." "We'll need to know the name of the friend and any others," Nate adds, to which she nods. "Do you know if he was having trouble with anyone?" I ask, staring down at the page of my notepad in preparation. "I don't think so. He never said anything." She stiffens. "Why?" I hold up a hand to calm her sudden concerns. "It's just a standard question. Don't worry." Kate's lips suddenly tremble, seeming to have forgotten the questions. "He was such a good boy. You know that, Celeste." Her words are lost in a wave of tears once again. I realize we're probably going to get little else out of her today. Then Nate suddenly stands from his place, moving from the sofa to sit beside Kate. He rests his hand carefully over hers. "It's all right, Mrs. Hayes. You'll get through this." The voice he uses is so soothing I think even I would feel at ease if I were grieving. Then the oddest thing happens. Kate's whole demeanor shifts. Instead of the broken woman from a moment before, she sits straighter. There's an understanding smile on her pale face, which now returns to some color. It's as though someone waved a magic wand and took the grief from her. She flicks her hardened gaze to meet mine. "I want you to find the son of a bitch who did this to my boy, Celeste." I balk at the sudden dramatic change, eventually blinking out of my surprise to reply. "I will," I reply in a resolute tone. "Don't worry. It's a promise I intend to keep." Kate gives a grateful smile, also turning her thankful gaze to Nate. His hand is still on hers. "Is there anyone we can call for you?" Nate asks in response to the woman's attention. She shakes her head. "No, it was just me and Garrett." I stand from my place, clipping my pad back on my belt. "All right, Kate. Get in touch with us whenever you need to, or if you remember something. I'll send Tina around later to check on you. She might have more questions then." "Thank you," she replies. Nate stands as well, his hand leaving Kate's. As soon as he steps away from the sofa, I frown, watching as Kate curls back in on herself, her eyes misting over and a tear falling free. Whatever moment of clear thought she'd had is apparently drowned by grief once again. We leave the house, and I swallow hard as I shut the door on the echoes of Kate's pained cries. Heading back to the car, Nate turns and rests against it, folding his arms and sighing. "That was tough," he says, sounding a little defeated. "I didn't expect it to be easy," I reply, resting against the car as well. The metal is cold, the air turning chill under the heavy gray sky above. Wind rustles through the trees as I stare through the window of the house. Kate is still curled into the armchair in the front room, crying into her hands. I snap my focus away with a frown. I push myself up, shaking my head. I need to catch this guy before I have to tell another mother her child is dead. We need to catch this guy, Nate corrects me. My team hasn't caught this guy yet either, and that needs to be rectified. Soon. I give a sharp nod of agreement. Let's get going. I slide into the driver's side, Nate walking around to fold himself back into the passenger seat. Inside, I grip the steering wheel. The car groans to life as I turn the key. I glance over at Nate, the man shifting awkwardly in the seat. What you did in there with Kate was really impressive, I say, letting the car warm up for a moment before leaving. Nate looks over at me with raised brows. What did I do? I gesture back at the house. The way you got Kate to calm down. His surprise turns to uncertainty. Oh, you noticed that? It was hard not to, I reply. He smiles. It's a talent I've had for some time, being able to calm people. I wish I had that talent. I give a chuckle, one he joins in with. Back at the police station. Thankful to get away from thoughts of what just happened, we head back to meet the others. When we arrive, we find Adam already waiting inside the foyer of the station. How did it go? He asks as soon as we push open the glass doors, the question directed more at Nate than me. Nate shakes his head, then gives a heavy shrug. About as well as you'd expect. I try to stifle my surprise when Adam's expression softens, true concern lining his handsome features. He places a comforting hand on Nate's arm. Let's just catch him, Nate says in response to the team leader's worry. Snapping my gaze away, trying not to make it too obvious I'd been watching the tender moment, I move further into the station, heading to the basement lab. The two of them follow after me. Down in the basement. Garrett Hayes lays spread on the cold, stark metal table, his already pale skin made white beneath the intense light hanging above. A simple cloth covers him. Only his head and shoulders show, along with the wound savagely torn across his neck. Now that it's fully exposed, I have a hard time not recoiling from the macabre sight, though I manage to steady myself. Images of the boy's heartbroken mother flash into my mind with the force of a tidal wave. The memories flood over me and I stumble a little, taking a ragged breath to keep the emotion from overwhelming me. This shouldn't have happened to him. Verta swings around on his seat at the other end of the room, standing and coming towards us. He eyes Adam for a moment, his gaze shifting over to me with a raised brow. Another agent? He asks, and I try to ignore the long smile he throws my way. I gesture towards Adam, who stands next to me. This is Commanding Agent Adam Dumortan. I enjoyed meeting your colleague, Verta says, gesturing to Nate, who smiles. It's a pleasure to meet you too, Agent. Adam stiffens a little, as hesitant to shake Verta's hand as he'd been to take mine. Yes, he replies stiffly. Have you found anything yet? I ask, turning the focus back to the case. Verta glances at the boy, his face pinching into sympathy for a moment, then turns to retrieve a test tube. A long cotton swab rests inside, the bottom flecked with red. I haven't had time to do an autopsy yet, but I did find blood under his fingernails. Seems he managed to take away a bit of his killer. Adam frowns, lifting the sheet a little to examine the victim's arms laying limply on the table. I see no defensive marks. Although it's difficult to imagine the boy let the killer rip his throat out, Agent Dumortan is correct. It doesn't look like Garrett put up much of a fight. Verta gives a solemn nod, continuing. I don't think the blood beneath his fingernails was defensive. More accidental. His fingertips have bruising on them, as though he grabbed onto something very tightly. His killer, I answer, to which Verta gives a shrug. That would be my guess. He swings around, placing down the test tube and picking up some glass slides. A distilled blob of blood stains each surface. What's even more interesting, though, is that, once again, the blood matches what you found at the warehouse, and what was discovered in the first victim. I sigh, not sure I can handle the amount of weirdness being piled onto this case. Verta places the slides down, turning back to face us. If it is the same killer, then this is a much different method.
There was no blood transfusion. In fact, there was hardly any blood at all.
We found minimal blood at the scene, I say, frowning as I try to think back. Most of it was on his clothing. Could the killer have tied him down, like with the first victim?
I don't think so. There's no evidence of it. Not even marks of handprints.
I run a hand over my neck, staring at the victim with a frown. There has to be something we're missing. All we have to go on is the blood, which so far is getting us nowhere. My focus falls on the two agents standing either side of me, both stiff and unmoving. You've both been quiet. Anything to add? Nate seems startled out of his thoughts, glancing between me and Verda.
Was there saliva around the wound?
Verda's brows shoot up.
Yes. Good guess.
Adam's lips tighten into a thin line. Yes, it was. He says the words through gritted teeth, apparently disapproving of Nate's odd question.
I guess you were thinking it might be an animal attack. I was thinking the same thing, yet...
Verda's words trail off. He seems to be lost in thought.
Animals attack out of fear or need, he says finally. They don't intentionally inflict damage like this. It's as though whatever killed him made one wound to kill him, then ripped the throat out in spite. Plus the lack of blood is strange for an animal attack.
Placing a hand on his chin, he purses his full lips.
We had a case like this in the city once. Some occult-obsessed group decided consuming human blood would be a good idea, so they killed people in order to try it out.
How did that end? Nate asks, passing a steady glance over to Adam.
Most died of disease from one of their victims. It's how we eventually caught them.
The reply seems to make the two agents relax a little. Verda suddenly whips around, grabbing up a sheet of paper.
But getting back to our case, there's also the fact that the boy's dopamine levels were well above normal range.
Dopamine? Adam asks. It's a neurotransmitter, I reply. It tells our brain we'll be rewarded, that whatever we are thinking of doing will bring pleasure. The room falls silent, and I glance up to find them all staring at me in surprise.
That's right,
Verda replies. I can't help but give a little smile of triumph at the pride in his tone, and also the shocked faces of the agents.
It's often thought of as a happy hormone.
I stare down at Garrett once again. Do you think he was on drugs, or someone gave him drugs? For the dopamine to be that high?
Not that I can tell,
Verda replies, placing down the paper and sighing heavily.
I won't be able to confirm, or know much of anything else, until I get the test results back.
The hospital still giving you trouble? I ask. Verda nods, his lips thinning. I rub at the sides of my head, hoping to quell the headache beginning to form with all this new information. The cold of the room is really beginning to seep through my clothes, and I wrap my arms about myself to stave off the chill. I doubt there's anything else we can learn until Verda's done the autopsy, I say, to which the doctor gives a nod of confirmation. I guess we'll leave you to... I glance down at Garrett's lifeless body with a grimace. Your patient. Verda chuckles.
Let's hope my waiting room doesn't fill up any further.
Yeah, I reply, though not in as light a tone as I'd intended. After that, I head out of the room, once again followed by the two very quiet agents on either side of me. We head up the stairs to the warmer station above, and I can't help thinking how eerily it feels like passing from the underworld back into the land of the living. The station is pretty empty, as usual. Only Douglas is here, sitting slouched in his chair at the front desk, eating. The sweet smell of muffins permeates the entire building. I try to ignore the pangs of hunger that tighten my stomach, only now realizing I haven't eaten since this morning. The group of us wind our way between the few open cubicles and towards my office, where I can already see Farah and Morgan inside. I take one step into the room before my attention snaps to the corner of my desk. It's covered in silver duct tape, though I can see chunks of wood splintered away, jetting out from under the tape. I stare at the damaged corner, then shift my gaze up to the group. What the hell happened to my desk? Farah holds up her hands.
It wasn't me. I apologize, Detective, Adam says from behind, making me spin around to face him. It was my fault. I knocked into it by accident. You knocked into it and managed to take a corner off? I don't mean to sound so shocked, but I can't help but wonder how big of a bruise he must have. His lips twitch for a moment, even more so as Farah chuckles from the chair in front of the desk. I will pay for repairs, Adam replies. He moves past me, obviously putting an end to that conversation. I shake my head, then move around my injured desk and take my seat. The familiarity of it is comforting, and my shoulders unknot a little as I lean back. The room falls quiet. I stare at my desk in thought. So much has happened so quickly, I've barely had a chance to keep on top of this case at all. So what happens now? Morgan asks from her place, still partly hidden by the filing cabinet. I'm amazed when they all turn to look at me for a response. How to proceed in this case has apparently fallen to me. We need to concentrate on the blood, I say, leaning forwards. It's just too big a piece of evidence to ignore. There is a heavy pause. The group glances at each other, all of them suddenly tense. We have little evidence so far about the blood, Adam says finally. But if that's what you want to pursue, then I suppose we have no choice. There's a heavy tone of sarcasm to his voice, but I try to ignore it, hoping we may finally get somewhere in this case if we're all on the same page. 2 days later. The blood, as odd as it is, seems to get us nowhere. The test results continue to be delayed, and even after examining the blood further with what he has, Verda can provide no further information. A couple of days of work produces little more than what we already knew before. Tina has little more luck than us, having interviewed the residents of the alley Garrett Hayes was killed in. Apparently one of the residents had heard some odd noise, chanting or singing, they thought, but that's not unusual. Many of the local pub's frequenters are pretty noisy as they head home. I get Tina to continue doing what she can with the residents. Meanwhile, the rest of us continue focusing on the victims. The experience has been interesting, getting to watch Unit Bravo work properly for the first time. The cohesiveness with which they work together is astounding, and I don't think I've ever seen better, not even back at the academy. At times, I look up and watch as Adam and Nate discuss a possible idea around the circular wooden table we just about managed to fit into my office to use as a communal work desk. The two barely talk in full sentences, each seeming to know what the other is going to say without actually speaking it. Farah tends to stick outside of the group, fetching things or suggesting outlandish ideas which, in all fairness, the others do consider before dismissing. Even Morgan joins in, clarifying certain things about evidence or checking files for confirmation about ideas. For a long while I keep mostly to myself, unsure of how to integrate into the obviously tight-knit, well-organized team. But today I find myself drawn into conversation. Flashing my gaze over my computer monitor, I let out a heavy sigh to see my email inbox still stark and empty. Nate's gaze moves on to me, apparently hearing my disappointment. Something wrong, Detective? I was hoping for the blood test results by now, I reply, leaning back and pushing away the file on my desk. I've reread it about 50 times already. They're still not here? Farah asks with a genuine frown of confusion. We should have gotten the agency to do it. How quickly do you normally get results back? I ask, pursing my lips. Within the hour for most of them, Adam replies nonchalantly, not looking up from the papers on the desk. I almost fall out of my chair. An hour? I barely get replies from Tina within an hour, and she's only in the next room. My brows don't come down from the shock, and I shake my head in disbelief. Your bosses must have made a deal with the devil for that fast of a process. Probably not far off, Farah mutters as she stares down at an open file in her lap. Adam shoots her a glare, one the young agent pointedly ignores, except for the small flicker of an amused smile. It is strange adjusting to how small-town procedures work. The agency is focused on what agents need, so it's unusual for us to have to wait for evidence or test results. But I'm sure your hospital is doing the best they can. Nate smiles, the encouraging words genuine. I glance away, wondering if now is the best time to tell them that the hospital is about as hospitable as a stubborn rhino. It was once the mayor's committee renovation project, but it was left behind when his focus switched to the police station after Douglas joined. The mayor's attention, and more importantly, funds, started piling onto the station instead, an insult the hospital never lets us forget. Small town politics at its finest. Thankfully, I don't have to decide whether to tell them as Nate calls to me again. Detective. I glance up, a brow arched. Yeah? Mind if we get your opinion on something? He asks, Adam shifting uneasily beside him. It seems we're at an impasse, neither of us agreeing with the other. He gives a light chuckle, the first cheerful sound in the office for the past couple of days. Smiling, I push myself out of my chair to head towards them. Of course, I'd be more than happy to help. Thank you, Nate replies, a smile on his lips. I barely make the 2 steps to the table before a knock raps at the door. We all glance at it. Tina peers around the doorframe, throwing a polite smile at the group. Celeste, she says, her voice a little tense. The mayor's on the phone for you. Not exactly something I'd been hoping to hear. I take a deep breath and give a nod. Sorry, go on without me, I say to the group before following Tina out into the station and towards the front desk. The afternoon sun blares unobstructed through the glass windows that make up the walls of the station. I blink against the intense light. Afternoon? I didn't even realize. Apparently it's easy to lose track of time when you're desperate to find any new evidence in a pile full of useless information. Tina holds the phone out towards me, throwing me a sympathetic smile as she does. Dealing with the mayor is never exactly easy. All I can do is hope he's been golfing and it's put him in a good mood. Or had one of those liquid lunches he enjoys so much. At least it's Douglas's day off. Don't think I could handle speaking to the mayor with his son listening to every word. I hold the receiver to my ear, taking a deep breath. Good afternoon, Mayor, I say, forcing a politeness to my words. Good? He snarls down the phone in return. Good? How can it be good when the whole town has been clambering to get hold of me due to panic? I frown, staring at the phone for a moment before replacing it back to my ear. Panic? People didn't seem too disturbed the past few days as we've been... Well, maybe that was before that damn reporter decided to make a mockery of your investigation. My hand clamps around the phone tighter. What? Tina, apparently hearing every delightful word the mayor has spoken through the phone, slides the local, and only, newspaper in town, the Wayhaven Press, along the desk in front of me. Bold, black words sit stark against the white paper on the front page. My stomach sinks as I read. Police baffled by blood and murders, the headline reads. Can they protect us if they don't know what's happening? Killer remains at large while they fumble. Read more inside. The byline says, written by Robert Marks. I push the paper away. Bobby's a reporter. What did you expect? I expected you to make enough progress so I wouldn't have a chance to write such paranoia-inducing stories, the mayor yells, loud enough to make me yank the receiver away from my ear again. Balancing the phone beneath my chin, I punch the paper into a ball and chuck it into the bin. Look, I'll deal with Bobby. I will be dealing with that so-called reporter, he interrupts. You will be out patrolling tonight and showing the town you're on top of this. I don't think me patrolling is going to help this investigation along. Well, too bad, detective. He snorts like a bull about to charge. Agent DeWolfe, said you were up for this case, and if you're not, I will be passing it on to her more capable hands. I give a nod. Of course, Mayor. He's right about one thing. I should get out there to let the town know I'm doing my best to protect them. Thank you, Detective, he replies, calmed somewhat from a moment before. I expect a copy of your report tomorrow afternoon. We put down the phone at the same time, the conversation ending with civility at least. I slouch forward on the counter and let out a groan. Ugh, how did Bobby even get the information? I saw Doug chatting to him yesterday, Tina replies. I stiffen, my eyes wide. Are you kidding me? The mayor just chewed me out over something his own son let happen. She shrugs, a small smile playing on her pink lips. I'm guessing that's why he wanted to deal with Bobby himself. I groan again.
I'd offer to patrol with you tonight, like old times, Tina says, shifting back onto the tall stool behind the front desk with little issue. But I'm stuck on desk duty all night. It's all right, I reply, forcing myself up and dragging my fingers over my hair. I think I'll probably have enough backup. We both turn to stare into my office, where Unit Bravo are still deep in investigation. If I've got to forego sleep to go on patrol, then they certainly aren't getting out of it. Tina grins. Now you're just trying to make me jealous. I shake my head and step away. She places a hand on mine to make me pause. You'll find the killer. Don't worry. Everyone in the station has complete faith in you. I smile at the genuine, open expression she offers with her words. Thanks, Tina, I reply, patting her arm. I really needed to hear that. It's the truth. She turns back to the front desk. Now, go have your fun wandering around town with 4 hot agents. In the dark. I roll my eyes, though I keep my smile as I move back towards my office. As I step inside my office, the entire team shifts their focus to me, and I hesitate under the sudden attention. What did the mayor want? Adam asks. To let me know that I'll be going on patrol tonight, I reply, slumping into my chair. The strain of the day presses on my shoulders, an ache settling down my back, but I force myself forwards. Patrol? Farah asks, leaning forwards and resting her hands on my desk. Like walking? Around town? I arch a brow. That's usually what a patrol involves, yes. Adam steps forward to stand imposingly in front of my desk, Farah shrinking away. You can't, he begins. We'll join you, Detective, Nate interrupts quickly, laying a hand on Adam's shoulder. 5 sets of eyes are going to be better than 1. Adam rolls his lips together before spinning away and moving to stare out of the window. Thanks, I reply, letting out a relieved breath. Well, that was easier than expected. I really would appreciate the help. Nate settles into the chair once again. It's what we're here for, Detective. You might as well put us to use. A lot of good a patrol's going to do, Morgan scoffs from her corner, the words framed by curls of cigarette smoke. Oh, I don't know, Farah says to Morgan, slouching back into the chair. It's been a while since I've been on a hunt. Morgan pulls the cigarette out between tight lips. But who will be hunting who? And with that not at all terrifying question hanging around us, we all decide to meet up later that evening in the center of town for the patrol.